the connection between.
Yeah, she has like severe anxiety. I feel like it's like way past GAD at this point. But like when she noticed when she got like stressed out, she would get like these really bad headaches, or she would become confused. Like she said, like how she described it, her mind kind of like felt blocked, I guess.
Mm.
Or like when she was stressed out, she felt like she just could not sit still. And so we kind of like backtracked and tried to like figure out what her triggers were to like figure out just like that situation that made it worse and how long it's been going on. And she noticed as we were talking about it that like every time she had like this interaction with somebody and she had a lot of like stress or anxiety, like she got headaches or she felt like really stressed. Or like when she became nervous and anxious, she felt like she physically needed to get up and just kind of like leave a room or like
Okay.
move away, or else her anxiety would get bad or worse. So, and she was really shocked. And I kind of like showed her like a picture. I went on Google and pulled up like a picture on how like, it was like highlighted, like, so like the head was like red and like shoulders were red and stuff like it was cool. But she was really surprised that that could happen.
Okay. Interesting. So she probably appreciated kind of making that connection with you, kind of gaining that new insight to herself. Did you feel like that brought her any comfort or helped her feel any better just having that information, or like what was the impact that knowing that information had on her?
Yeah, actually, I think it went like two different ways. So she actually asked if it's something that me and her can go over when she comes up with different things. So I went on, I use this website called Therapist Aid or Therapy Aid, and you can get like body printouts on
Mm-hmm.
there for free. So I printed out a bunch of them and I gave them to her. And I said, every time we have a session, you can just like circle or something or color it in or while we're talking or like at the end, whatever she's comfortable with. But she's asked if we can kind of continue learning about it. She's kind
Yeah.
of interested in it. So I didn't know a lot of people didn't know that, yeah, you're could be affected. So
Yeah.
it was interesting. It was
That's
a good
awesome.
conversation.
That's awesome. Yeah, truth be told, a lot of your guys' workbooks come right from Therapy Aid or Therapist Aid. So yeah, we love Therapist Aid. Lots of good stuff
Yeah,
there. So like
I love it.
thank you for reiterating that. And also, I don't know if we talk. You always hear me saying, psychoeducation, 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 and I think the reason for that is just having that information, knowing that they're not the only one that feels that way, can be very empowering, and just not feeling so alone can be very empowering. Knowing there's even a name for how they're feeling, that it's like a thing, can be very empowering. And you'll often see people just have like a reduction in symptoms just knowing what their diagnosis is, or knowing that other people also have this diagnosis. They're not the only one in the world. So that's kind of the reason why um, I'm so big on psychoeducation. It's also it's almost like a relief sometimes to people, and it is just helpful to have that information about themselves. So that's kind of why I am big on psychoeducation. All right, thank you for sharing. Anyone else? How your week went using the interventions from last week, or new activities? Did they go over well? Do you have any barriers before we get into week 6? Andrew, you unmuted. Did you want to share?
No, no, I
Oh,
didn't.
okay. I keep up real big on my screen, like you're about to share something. Okay. Well, if you think
Okay.
of something throughout the course of the class today, please feel free to unmute and share, or put it in the chat. But let's go ahead and get into week 6. Let me go ahead and share on my screen, and we'll get into it. Okay, so you've made it this far. You made it past the halfway point. Now we're going to talk about crisis management. And just real quick, if you remember from last series, crisis management in series 1 was talking about the WRAP, the Wellness Recovery Action Plan. We also talked about advanced directives in series 1. So we're going to kind of go a little bit further now, like we always do in series 2, and continue talking about crisis management, but maybe in more advanced ways or in different ways that you can still apply crisis management to your clients. So just as a refresher, you as TBS are not providing crisis intervention. That is reserved for when somebody is actually in the midst of a crisis. A licensed professional, so counselor, therapist, social worker, nurse practitioner who has a higher level of licensure, higher level of education, will be intervening when somebody's actually within a crisis. But that does not mean that you cannot work before a crisis to help prevent it from occurring, or once it is over, to sort of learn from that crisis or to put things into place to reduce the effects that the crisis is having on that person. So you absolutely play a really important part when it comes to crisis management. All right, so what is it? Let's just refresh again. This is from series 1, but it doesn't hurt to revisit it. It is what you do, but it's also kind of what the organization does. So, here at ViaQuest, we all take Aegis, which is a crisis management, crisis prevention program. So we're all kind of responsible for preventing and helping clients who may be in crisis. So it's the whole organization working towards it. To respond to a threat, an unanticipated event, or a negative disruption with any potential to harm people, property, the business, maybe the business of ViaQuest, and any processes that may be disrupted because of that crisis. So that's one way also to think about crisis management and what it is. Some other things to think about when it comes to crisis is that you as a TBS play a part. Other providers also play their part, like I mentioned, therapists, nurse practitioners. So we all have a part to play in supporting our clients before, during, and after. So I did just want to take a second and see what you guys thought. As from your perspective, how do you feel it is important to providing TBS services to be involved in crisis management? And if you want to give us some examples, it'd be great. How have you provided crisis management to your clients in the past? What have you done? What activities? What have you engaged your clients in? What have you found to be helpful? You can either unmute and share, or please feel free to put that in the chat. Anybody at all? What have you done for crisis management?
I've had 2 clients at my facility. One has had 2, we'll say probably suicidal ideologies.
Okay.
The other one has, made comments, no plan, no nothing, just being fed up and angry. But we all come together, like I have a really good relationship with my social worker, my director of nursing, and everybody, and we just collectively, the treatment plan comes together. I've done safety plans, we've done wraps and things like that, just letting them know that you are a support. I guess sometimes it benefits too if you're there every day. I have one facility 5 days a week, so it's reassuring to residents knowing that they get to see you every day and that you're there for that support. So
yeah, and that's a great point that you notice that they may not be making suicidal, homicidal statements. They may not even have any specific ideation that they're talking about, but still you notice that it's important to be aware of what comes before that, or to notice the irritation, because that builds for sure. So we need to be aware even of before the crisis. What is the warning sign? What is the telltale sign that it might be coming, or could be intervened earlier rather than later? So I'm glad that you're aware of that and you kind of are on high alert to what's going on with your clients. That's great. Oh, we got a bunch in the chat. Okay. Let's see. Samantha says she's done safety plans. It helps them, they know their signs and triggers. Absolutely. Kirsten says, for myself, I've used it to help staff know the signs. Yep. So including other people on the care team, so they know when behaviors are brewing. Absolutely. Madeline says, helps with setting boundaries. Madeline, can you talk a little bit more about that? How do you use crisis management when it comes to boundaries? In what way do you kind of connect crisis management with boundaries? I'm just curious what that looks like.
So, for one of my clients, he's super behavioral regarding like inappropriate statements, arguing with staff, a lot of colorful language and all that. So our crisis management usually is like picking and choosing correct statements and kind of preparing before he starts yelling at other staff members. Which sometimes it's challenging because the staff engages him, and like I've tried to tell him from time to time, like, please don't like if he like starts arguing or anything, like try to just walk away. So a lot of our like crisis management is preparing him for those conversations to prevent him from starting the arguments in the first place.
That's great. That's a very advanced way to present it to your client, to be aware of boundaries and how that's a trigger for them, and to be aware of that, to kind of keep away from a crisis, or to reduce the impact of one. That's great. Great work. Awesome. Let's see, did I miss anybody in the chat? I think we had one more. Seneca said, important to help our clients be able to recognize triggers or warnings, help them avoid bad situations, negative thinking, help them to build their toolkit so they feel safe and supported. Okay, very good. Sounds like you guys are all doing a lot of things that we talked about in series 1. That's great. That's really good to hear. So I appreciate you guys sharing and doing a lot of those things. So today we're going to kind of build on what you're already doing. We're going to kind of build on those safety plans, build on those wraps that you're doing, build on boundary work, and do a little bit more in-depth work. It's a DBT, a dialectical behavioral therapy skill called Dear Man. And this is also can be thought of like as a communication skill as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and play the video that's going to introduce the topic, and then we'll break it down more letter by letter. There's an acronym, of course, there's always an acronym. So each of the letters in Dear Man stands for something. So we'll break it down and practice using the Dear Man skill here in class, so that you can then teach it to your clients and have them practice using the Dear Man skill themselves. So I'll go ahead and play it. Let me know if for some reason you can't hear it. I'm pretty sure I shared my sound.
Dear Man is an acronym in the Interpersonal Effectiveness DBT skills. Dear Man skills teach you how to ask for something from someone while still maintaining a good relationship with that person. It's also a skill that can help you resolve conflicts and effectively say no when you need to. Each letter is a reminder of how to implement this skill in a conversation. The D in Dear Man reminds you to describe. First, let's set up the conversation by only stating the facts about it. You're not going to ask for, reject, or give an opinion at this point. You're just going to set up the facts about the situation so you and the other person are both on the same page. The E stands for express. After setting up the conversation, you want to express your feelings and understanding of it. This is best done by using I statements to take accountability for yourself and your emotions, and to keep the other person from becoming defensive in the conversation. A stands for assert. You set up the facts and expressed your feelings and understanding of the situation. Now, it's time to be clear and assert or ask for what you do or do not want. Be direct. Don't beat around the bush or assume the other person knows what you're talking about. They can't read your mind. You need to clearly state exactly what you want so there's no misunderstanding. The R stands for reinforce. Whether you're making a request or turning one down, be sure to reinforce the relationship between you and the other person. Acknowledge that the relationship is important to you and express how you'll feel about them regardless of the outcome. The M in MAN stands for mindful. Try to be fully present and focused on the current issue you're resolving. Don't fall into the trap of bringing up past events or overpromising the future. Use mindfulness to stay on topic and avoid going off on a rant. And of course, ignore the distractions from your phone or your environment. A in MAN stands for appear confident. Look the part. Sit up or stand up straight and make eye contact with the person you're speaking to. This lets the other person know that you're taking this conversation seriously and that you're confident you should get what you're asking for. And finally, N stands for negotiate. During this conversation, remember that you're trying to make the situation a win-win for yourself and the other person. Make your offer more appealing if the other person is not on board with the outcome. Using the Dear Man DBT skill can feel a bit awkward at first, but keep practicing. It'll be worth the effort to learn how to resolve conflicts and ask for things in a way that keeps a good relationship between you and those you love.
Okay, so we have learned about DBT before in other classes and other other sessions that we've had. But let's just refresh real quick on DBT, and then we'll get more specific into what Dear Man stands for. So just to refresh, DBT is dialectical behavior therapy. It teaches a range of skills for interpersonal relationships, emotion management, and more. If you remember the wise mind, the emotion mind, and sort of the logic mind, that is a DBT skill, if you remember that from a couple of weeks ago and also the first series. But specifically here, we're going to learn about Dear Man. There's an acronym that outlines a strategy for communicating effectively. This will help your clients to express their needs and their wants in a way that is respectful to others. You'll see some parallels here with the I statements, but it is more specific than the I statement, and it goes into more detail than the I statement. So if your client's really good at I statements and that seems to be working for them, you may find that they're ready now for a Dear Man. So using Dear Man increases the likelihood of positive outcomes from our interactions with others. So this is the first handout, 6.1, that was emailed to you. If you want to have it handy or if you have it printed out and you want to follow along, we'll go through each of these letters in Dear Man and look at examples of how to create a Dear Man statement. Okay, so just kind of in general, Dear Man teaches a strategy for effective communication. Using the skill, clients will learn to express their needs of what they want, but also be respectful of what others want. This is also just another way of looking at, not being assertive, overly assertive, or not being overly aggressive, but being assertive, kind of a middle ground in our way of communicating. So let's start with the D. The first D is to describe. So you're going to support your client to describe the current situation. Help your client to stick to the facts, be clear, be concise about the situation without any judgment. So this is one way that is very similar to the I statement. So in the I statement, we don't point the finger, we don't blame, we don't say things like always and never. That's very similar here in the describe portion of it, is to just stick to the facts. What is going on right now, kind of in black and white, is a good way to think about the describe step. So here is an example of describe. What are the facts of the situation, leaving out your opinions and interpretations. Just one simple way would be to say maybe to your boss, you have asked me to work late 3 days this week. Not saying things like you always ask me to work late, or what's wrong with you? You're a stupid idiot for making me work late all these days. Just the fact is you've asked me to work late 3 days this week, period. Keep it simple and to the point. So once you have described the situation, your client's ready then to go on to express their feelings. How do they feel about that? How do they feel about the situation? And this is an important part to take some time and remind your client that people cannot read your minds. People cannot always know how you're feeling. So they may have to clearly express, maybe using an I statement, how it is that they are feeling. Again, without blame, without finger pointing. It's important to express how they're feeling about that situation that they just described, helping the other person understand where they're coming from, or helping the other person to understand their point of view. So what might that look like is to use the I statement that we've already learned about so many times before. So maybe they have been asked to work late three nights this week. An expression of how they feel might be, I feel overwhelmed by the extra work that I've been given. So I feel blank when you asked me to work late 3 days this week. Okay, then we go on to assert. And this is that assertive communication. We have learned about assertive, aggressive communication before. We want to stay not aggressive, not passive, but kind of right in the middle in being assertive. And you may want to refresh your client's memory about this if you have been over it before. Assert themselves by asking clearly for what they want, or saying no clearly. Do not assume that others will figure out what they want. Again, remembering others cannot read their mind. Just state exactly what it is that they want as clearly as possible. The key to the assert phase is to state your request plainly. Might want to go over with your client, how will you tell someone what you need? And then respond with the specific language you will use. This is why we have the worksheet. They may need to write it down. They may have a lot of anxiety about, maybe they've never asserted themselves in this way before. So maybe writing it down, practicing it, role playing it is something they may need to really master the skill, or to feel prepared to do it, not just with you in session, but to do it with that person in their life that they're trying to communicate with. So what might that look like to assert? If they are being asked to work late and they're feeling overwhelmed, an assertive statement might be, I need to resume my regular 40-hour work week. It's specific. There's a number in there. It's clear what they need. I need to go back to 40 hours a week, period. Not much extra information in there. The R in Dear Man is for reinforce. And this is an interesting idea. I don't know that we've really talked about this before. And it's the idea of rewarding the person ahead of time by explaining the positive effects of getting what you want or need. This kind of might look like clarifying the negative consequences of not getting what you want or need. So really, you're kind of teaching your client to point out what is the benefit to the other person of them granting your client their request. What is the benefit of the boss giving you back your 40-hour work week? What is the other person going to get out of it? If I'm only working 40 hours a week, I'm going to be a better employee. I'll be more well rested. I may actually get more work done in 40 hours than I would working so much overtime. So let's see what an example of that might look like. You could also be using body language as well as words, maybe just smiling, saying thank you, and other kind gestures could work as well as words. So you could explain the benefit. If I'm only working 40 hours, I might be a more efficient, happier employee, but you could also use body language, smiling, saying thank you. Other types of reinforcement are appropriate as well. And then for the M, in Man, mindfulness. Encouraging your client to not be distracted by things going around them. Also a good reminder for you, doing this in session, for you also to not be distracted and to stay focused on the session and focus on the conversation. Helping your client to determine if the person they're talking to is acting defensive, how to keep the conversation on course. They may need to replay the same idea again and again, kind of ignoring any attacks, maybe from that boss who really needs that deadline met or really needs all that work completed by a certain time. May have to practice with your client, may have to role play with them, being assertive, standing up for themselves, going back to that 40-hour work week and not responding to the attacks, ignoring distractions. Just keep to their point, keep to what they want, keep to what they already decided is their end result, their end goal that they're looking for. So what that might look like in a conversation, maybe using that boss example, is I'd like to resolve the overtime issue before talking about the upcoming project. So really kind of putting a line in the sand. We're going to talk about this. I need to resolve this overtime issue before we do anything else. So not going off topic, not getting distracted, sticking to the topic is a good way to think about it. This is not easy. This is not going to be a natural skill for some people to go through this Dear Man step by step by step. But what we can do is encourage our clients to act as if, or to appear confident until they actually are feeling confident. So have them think about their body language, have them think about their facial expressions, have them think about how does their voice sound, how loud are they speaking. So encourage them to be confident in how they're communicating with their eye contact, speaking calmly, speaking clearly, maybe even slowing down the pace in which they speak, nodding, being affirming of others when they are talking, and kind of adopting an open or a willing posture. So again, more psychoeducation about body language, more psychoeducation about communication would be helpful here. Things like sitting forward, being attentive, avoiding crossing their arms, kind of offering open palms, keeping a pleasant look on your face are all great ways to appear confident as you are delivering that assertive message. So what might that look like, or what might that sound like for your client? Maybe a reminder to stand up or sit up straight, make appropriate eye contact, speak clearly, and try what they can to avoid any fidgeting. Okay, then our last letter is N for negotiate, being willing to give to get some of what they want. So this may be another skill to teach your client, kind of a compromise. Teaching your client to offer and ask for other solutions to the problem, maybe bringing down what it is that they're asking. This example, the client said, I'm not working overtime anymore. Maybe a compromise might be one night a week of overtime. Maybe saying no, but offering to do something else. And maybe I'm not going to work any more overtime, but I'll pick up a different project, or I'll go work in a different department. Focusing on what will work for the person. Reminding your client that you're not demanding anything, you're asking for something. If the person they're speaking with isn't on board with their request, remember that compromise idea, they have to sometimes give to get. So what might this look like as an example? I'll finish the extra work this week, but I won't be able to manage the same amount of work next week. So there's that negotiation, there's that giving for this week to give what they want that giving for this week to get what they want for next week as far as their schedule. So that's a good example of compromise, good example of negotiating. So here's a couple examples that may be more appropriate to your clients. Maybe they're not working overtime, with their boss, but this may be more what they're experiencing. As a Dear Man example, their client describes the issue. My roommate and I have been getting in frequent arguments about keeping shared space clean and asking before using each other's belongings to express how they're feeling. I know you worry about me living more independently, but the stress of living with a roommate is affecting my mental health. Asserting themselves, I think I am ready to live on my own since I have been able to take care of my basic needs with minimal help for several weeks now. Reinforcing, I have been using my walker more frequently and have been keeping my cell phone on me with this lanyard I wear around my neck. I think living on my own will make me do more and more things independently instead of relying on other people. Being mindful, I understand that you worry about me and only want what's best for me. I'm lucky to have people in my life that care so much about my well-being. Some reminders to appear confident by making eye contact, being calm instead of reactive, stating things clearly, and then what they're willing to negotiate or what they're willing to give to get. I'd be willing to have some home visitors come during the day, or even moving somewhere that has staff, but like an apartment, like a private living space. So there's kind of that compromise or negotiation there. So that may be more kind of what your clients are dealing with. So any questions on Dear Man before we practice it here in class? Everybody have your handout nearby if you need to reference it. Okay, so we're going to kind of do an example for us, kind of an example for a TBS worker, and not so much for a client. So you as a TBS were asked to help on a project for a client that would require you to work late, but you have already made dinner plans with friends. So kind of put yourself in that situation, and let's practice using Dear Man. Let me get that up here. So how would you describe the facts of the situation? You're being asked to work late, even though you already have dinner plans. How would you describe the facts of the situation? No opinions, no interpretations. We're just describing right now. Oh, we got something in the chat. Excuse me. Okay, being asked to work late, but plans outside of work have already been made. Perfect. Yes, simple, to the point, very good.
I would say something like that too. I would say, I have a conflict here. I've already made some plans.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, there's no opinion, no judgment. That's just the simple fact of the situation. Okay, very good. So how would you express how you're feeling about being asked to work late, but you already have plans? Maybe even using an I statement. How do you feel when you're being asked to work late? What would you say to your boss? Oh, we got something in the chat, maybe. Samantha, I feel frustrated because I was asked to work late. Okay. Okay. Feeling frustrated. Anybody feeling anything different? Being asked to work late? Okay. All right, so how would you assert yourself? How would you tell your boss what you need? And then use specific language. I think actually I already saw it, a good example in the chat. Kirsten said, I can't work late today, but I could work late tomorrow. So you're already kind of getting into negotiations. So that's good though. That's assertive, telling somebody what you need. I need tonight off, but I can help you out maybe the next day. Would anybody say anything else different for asserting what you need?
I might say that I've made another commitment. I'd like to honor that commitment. Can I help you in another way?
Perfect. Perfect. That's very clear. Very good. I might say something like, I need a day's notice or 2 days notice. You know, I'm willing to help out, but I need some notice. That's what I would need. Okay. All right. So for reinforcing, this could either be a verbal reinforcement of how that would benefit the other person if they were to respond well to your assertive statement. Or it could also be a nonverbal. It could be a smile, it could be a nod, it could be eye contact. What kind of comes more natural for you as far as reinforcing?
Just saying thank you and that you appreciate them for being considerate of you.
Sure, perfect. Perfect. Yeah, thank you for listening. Thank you for taking into consideration my point of view. Very good. Okay, we're like halfway there, guys. We got mindfulness next. What is the goal of your interaction? What could perhaps distract from that goal? How might you keep this interaction focused to, I can't work late tonight, but I could work late a different night? How would you keep it on the topic? This one's a little tricky. Oh, got something in the chat. Have both individual feel heard and keep the conversation short. Okay. Yes, I would agree. There's something to be said to just saying what you have to say and then leaving it at that. Sometimes the longer you draw it out, you can get talked into it, or you can be persuaded, or I didn't want to stay late, but here I am staying late having this conversation with you. I should have been at dinner with my friend 10 minutes ago. So yeah, that's a great one, actually. Seneca is just saying what you need to say and get out of there. That's a great one. I like that one. Okay. All right. So how do you guys appear confident? What do you do verbally? What do you do non-verbally? What helps you feel confident? Oh, something in the chat. Making eye contact, not fidgeting. Okay, that's a good one. Me personally, I feel more confident when I'm standing up. I prefer to train standing up. I think better on my feet. That's just me. Something else in the chat, looking the person in the eye, having the conversation where it's quiet, giving someone's full attention standing up. Okay. All right, very good. And then we kind of got into a little bit of negotiation. I'll work late tomorrow, but I can't work late today. Would anybody negotiate differently, or would you propose a different resolution to this problem? You guys not big negotiators? I know negotiating's no fun. I hate buying cars. I don't like that kind of negotiating. Let's see, what do we got? I'll be glad to help out later in the week if needed. Okay, great. Yep. Okay. All right, so you guys get it. You guys get the idea. Oh, one more in the chat. Can it be some other time? I already have a plan. Perfect. Very good. You guys get the idea. So now that you know how to do it, you can walk your clients through it, maybe even role play it with them so they get really good at it. This is another skill that just takes practice, especially that negotiation part. I noticed some hesitancy with you guys, and I know I don't really like the negotiation part. So that maybe that one particularly may need a little bit of extra work. So try out Dear Man. See if that might help some communication with your client and maybe prevent some crisis. Remember, this is crisis management. All right, so we have a couple other handouts that I wanted to go over that are related to crisis management. This one is about the cycle of anger provided to you for a couple of reasons. First off, I'm always big on psychoeducation. So what this is a diagram sort of breaking down the anger cycle as beginning with a trigger, leading to a negative thought, emotions, physical symptoms, like maybe the next step for your client now that they've realized anxiety and physical symptoms might be to notice anger and physical symptoms, and then a behavioral response. So this is very similar. It's kind of a condensed version of those 7 CBT worksheets. If you remember those from the first workbook, this kind of puts it all together. It talks about thoughts, talks about emotional response. What did I say? What did I do? And then thinking back, what could I have done differently? What could I have thought differently? And how would that have led to a different outcome? But let's real quick just go through this. That there is always that triggering event. What was it that set the person off? Did it bring up intense emotions? Did it remind them of a trauma in the past? It could be lots of different things. It could be a sound. It could be being in a particular location. It could be a smell. Many different things could be triggers. Leading to the negative thoughts, which are irrational, often not true, often negative, that occur as a result of the trigger, that often consume the person's focus in the moment. They often can't think of anything else. Those triggers and negative thoughts lead to many different negative emotions, even if they don't seem to make sense or if they're irrational, like in the moment. At this point in the cycle of anger, you'll notice the anger is building, that fire is kind of getting bigger and bigger and bigger. person is usually getting closer to some kind of verbal response or a physical reaction, may start to notice those physical symptoms. Their face may start to feel warm. They may actually see red because of the blood vessels in their eyes. There's increased blood flow, and they may actually be seeing red. They may feel like their hands are balling up. People experience all kinds of physical symptoms when they are in the anger cycle. Behavioral response will differ from person to person, but may see fighting, yelling, arguing, criticizing. Go over with your client what they tend to experience and how this is all related. So this is from a psychoeducation point, but you could also use it maybe after a crisis to sort of look back and learn from it. What was the trigger? Maybe they don't even know what it was. Maybe they need your help to really walk through. It was that person who said XYZ to me, or it was that smell of that cleaning solution in the bathroom that reminded me of being in the hospital when I had that surgery 3 years ago. So it can be used to prevent. It can also be used kind of after. So I just want to check in real quick and see if anybody has ever used a cycle of anger, psychoeducation, or if you have found any valuable information coming from using a cycle of anger with a client. Oh, wow, somebody right away in the chat. Seneca, okay. Seneca, just real quick, what have you found to be helpful about using a cycle of anger? Either a psychoeducation, or how did you implement it?
I actually use this one and the cycle of depression one as well.
Yes.
So for this one, he's just angry all the time. This is somebody that I've talked about like in the past in this class. He's got like a background of like abuse. So he thinks that when he communicates with people, that's how he needs to talk to people as well. So I kind of, instead of like talking to him about it, I explain to him his actions by going around in the circle. And I do the same thing with the cycle of depression when he's really upset too, because his yelling and words are not getting through to people. So it's
Yeah,
I find it pretty helpful.
great. That's great. Thank you for sharing. Anyone else finding any help in using or psychoeducating on cycle of anger? Okay, well, that is handout 6.2. Lots of good information over here on the right-hand side about all of the different parts of the cycle there. Okay, so our next topic, and I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, but this is all related to crisis management, either to prevent or to learn after a crisis. The next one is titled Social Anxiety Safety Behaviors. And you might think that safety behaviors are a good thing because safety is good. But actually, when we're talking about safety behaviors, it's actually that the person is avoiding something or avoiding someone or avoiding a source of their anxiety. It provides temporary relief in the moment, but over the long term, it actually makes their anxiety worse. There's a saying, what you resist persists. So if you are afraid of driving, the longer you avoid driving, the bigger your anxiety is going to get, the more anxious you're going to get, the more worried you're going to get. When you finally do try to go learn how to drive, your anxiety is going to be like at a 10 out of 10 the longer that you try to avoid it versus maybe small doses or maybe simulated driving or reading about reading about maybe traffic laws or something like that, working up to it. So what we resist persists and kind of gets worse. So that's what we're talking about here. Safety behaviors are subtle actions used to avoid anxiety, usually in social situations. And the social anxiety safety behavior worksheet teaches about avoidance, that it does feel good in the moment to not go to that party or to not answer that phone call or to not open your mail. But over time, it just makes the problem that much more worse. So let's look at what we're talking about here with this particular handout. So these are just some examples of safety behaviors that your clients may be exhibiting or they may be talking about with you that, again, provide temporary relief, but over time are actually not helpful at all. So speaking softly, avoiding eye contact, using drugs or alcohol, maybe to numb those feelings of anxiety, maybe covering up with makeup or covering up with our clothing, using distractions to appear busy. I mean, lots of people are always on their phone or on their computer to avoid something that may be causing them anxiety around them. Caving to peer pressure or wishes of others are all falling under the category of safety behavior. So this is a great way to educate your client on what are safety behaviors, and they may notice that they're doing some of these. This could be a great conversation starter that, oh, I didn't realize that when I was not answering the phone or not returning text messages, that I was feeling better temporarily, but it was not solving my problems. It wasn't making my problems go away and was actually exacerbating my anxiety. So just real quick, do you guys notice your clients mentioning any of these safety behaviors or other safety behaviors when they talk about avoidance, when they talk about anxiety? Does any of these sound familiar? And actually, I'll go ahead and get the full one up here. Maybe you can see that better.
I have a client and she has a daughter that's very explosive and abusive. And so when her daughter acts like that, then she does like covering up. She acts like nothing happens. And she pretends like her family is all beautiful and happy. And she talks about when her daughter was like 3 and 4, but then she acts like it happened yesterday. So she goes back to a happy time and talk about it now, like, this is how my daughter is. And so she acts like, okay, if I just pretend it's not there and just think of all the good things, then it will go away. But then she does also like to talk excessive. She talks really fast and like, oh, like this, and like she gives me a lot of information in a very short period of time, and I cannot put like one word in between because it's like she's like so trying. She's like, please believe me, my daughter is nice, kind of a thing. That is like that. It's sad when she is like that.
Wow. So I heard a lot of different safety behaviors actually going on in there. It sounds like she's trying to focus on the positive. Sounds like she's trying to be positive, but she's taking it maybe too far and ignoring what is not going well and is ignoring maybe unsafe even things. And then with talking so much, if she's talking, you can't ask her those tough questions. Or if she has control of conversation, you can't go where she doesn't want to go
in
to
the
talk
direction
about.
that, yes, exactly. So she talks like for an hour, like nonstop. So then I already know that something bad happened.
Yeah, those are safety behaviors. Yeah. In the chat, we have Kirsten says, one of my clients stays in her room when there are big crowds. She will not even try to get out of her room when there are parties or bingo. Yep, that's definitely a safety behavior for sure. Okay, so maybe just bringing attention to this. And again, it's not to make your client feel bad. I mean, they're already feeling anxious. Let's not make them feel worse. But if you can kind of explain maybe the cycle of anxiety, just like you've explained the cycle of depression and you've explained the cycle of anger, that the cycle of anxiety is the more that you avoid these things, really the worse your anxiety is going to get. It's kind of counterintuitive to think the only way to get over something is to confront it, but that's really how anxiety works. The more we avoid it, the more we try to get away from it, the more it kind of chases us and it gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. Another thing we have, another handout, is identifying safety behaviors and ways you avoid situations. So this is very similar, it's just more of a checklist, helping your client to kind of go through this list of things that they do to cope with the feared situation, and maybe helping them figure out that it's maybe okay to do this to a certain point. Like maybe it's okay to listen to music, but if you have those headphones on 23 hours a day, then it's avoidance. If you're using music to calm down for 10 minutes or even 30 minutes, that's a coping skill. but to keep those on, 23 hours a day, now we're talking about avoidance. So maybe go through these and talk to your client about how much are you doing these, or in what ways are you doing it? Is it a coping skill, or are you doing it, too much? Lots of different things can be looked at in this light. Like when it comes to depression, we want to talk about self-care, but if you take care of yourself too much in bed, that is just exacerbating your depression, and it is no longer self-care. It is now, a symptom of depression. So this is just another way to look at safety behaviors in more of a checklist type form. So that was the fourth handout that we emailed to you before class. Okay, so we already talked about this, that we have seen some of these safety behaviors. If you're comfortable sharing, anybody themselves use any of these safety behaviors? Any of this sound familiar in your own personal life, if you're comfortable sharing? We just have a couple minutes left, but I just wanted to see if anybody would like to share personally. And if not, that's okay.
I do really good speaking with residents, like direct eye contact and maintaining, conversation, staying in the moment and present. But when I'm talking about myself, I avoid eye contact. I don't like to, I don't know, I feel like you're exposing yourself in a sense, but I feel more open when I'm listening to somebody else and being there for other people.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah. Okay, just something to think about. We all do this. We all have our own safety behaviors. Part of the handout that we sent you is just to kind of, again, educate on the cycle that how anxiety leads to safety behaviors, but then there's consequences. What is the consequence of listening to your headphones 23 hours a day? What is the consequence of staying in bed 3 days in a row? Might feel good, but there's a consequence for it. Okay. May want to just go over again some psychoeducation with your client about stress management tips. If they are struggling to engage in the appropriate level of self-care, you may want to provide some further education, some further psychoeducation on balancing that, doing it in an appropriate amount, not too much, not too little, what is working for them. Maybe even also providing some psychoeducation on stress in general, that not all stress is bad. Some stress is actually motivating to us. It's what gets us out of bed. It's what, keeps us going throughout the day. But when there's too much, that's when there is a problem. So again, psychoeducation about tips as a way to think about that as crisis management is a great thing to include as you're working with your client. So that was another handout that we sent to you as well. Okay, just a couple minutes left. I do want to get real quick to the documentation. So this week, everybody should be doing crisis management. You'll be choosing probably activities like maybe doing a safety plan or teaching distress tolerance skills, maybe doing psychoeducation, such as we learned about today. There was a lot of psychoeducation in what we went over today. What a client response might look like. We have a couple examples here. The first one is okay. That test client was engaged and participated in session today with learning Dear Man. That doesn't tell us a whole bunch. A little bit better is test was engaged and participated in session learning Dear Man. Test client agreed that she utilizes her safety plan when she becomes angry to refer to her coping skills. Test client stated, I think communicating is easy. I have a hard time understanding people sometimes, especially when I don't like what they say. Test client modeled in session the coping skill of deep breathing and voiced to the writer that she sometimes avoids conversation. So that is better. There's more information there. But I want to get your guys' feedback. Does that meet medical necessity? Would you say it differently? What's missing? What's your take on that second client response there?
Can you make it a little bigger?
Oh,
I can't read it. It's real tiny.
I don't know that I can. I'll read it one more time. Test was engaged and participated in session today with learning the Dear Man skill. Test agreed that she utilizes her safety plan when she becomes angry to refer to her coping skills. Test stated, I think communicating is easy. I have a hard time understanding people sometimes, especially when I don't like what they say. Test modeled in session the coping skill deep breathing and voiced to writer that she sometimes avoids conversation. So do we have a diagnosis in there?
No.
I mean, I hear anger, that could be a symptom of something else, but yeah, I don't see a diagnosis. I don't really hear a lot of symptoms. I mean, I hear anger, but not really much more than that. Oh, there's some things in the chat, sorry. What's going on in the chat? Doesn't say how Tess responded to the activity or how they felt after. Yes, very good. Doesn't say anything about a diagnosis. Totally agree. Thank you, Brittany. Missing her diagnosis. Yeah, I think that's the major one here. Missing symptoms, missing diagnosis. Okay, here's the plan. Let me just go right to the better plan. The better plan is test client will continue to work on communicating effectively. When she becomes angry, writer will continue to review the dear man skill with test client and provide her with tools on how to utilize her coping skills more often. Do we like the plan? Yes or no? What communication skills are we talking about? I guess we have dear man, but it's unclear if that's what they mean or if they're talking about other communication skills. I'm not sure 100% what they're talking about. Also, what coping skills? It's not that specific. In the chat, it's missing how many times. Yep, exactly. It's not measurable. That's definitely not there either. Okay, so it could be more specific and could be measurable as well. Okay, so just real quick, like with every week, we're always working towards discharge. That includes crisis management. We want to plan ahead for how clients will get that need met after services are over with us. Put that information in their discharge summary about crisis management as they are wrapping up services with you. So I know it's 5:02, so I will hang out here for a couple more minutes if anybody has any individual questions, but any general questions about crisis management or the handouts for this week. Everybody's good? Okay,
Oh,
I'll
I
see.
do have a question.
Yeah.
Can I use like reviewing the safety plan as the intervention?
We would
Or
prefer
not?
that you
Or yes.
used one of the activities from this week, but if you wanted to combine a safety plan with maybe using a cycle of anger, or if you wanted to combine a safety plan by putting some of those stress management tips on the safety plan, that would be a good
Okay.
combination. But yeah, start thinking about doing more than one and combining activities. Sure. Yeah, good question. All right, well, I will stay here for a couple more minutes. Like I said, if anybody else has any questions, feel free to stick around. Otherwise, I'll send out productivity. I'll send out average grades after class here, and I will see you guys next Tuesday. Have a good week. Talk to you guys later.